So hello, and welcome to Corfu!
Hi, I'm Matt. Over the last 25 years, I've travelled a lot. I've lived in 5 countries on 4 continents. I've flown over 1.3 million miles. I've visited over 100 countries, every American state, but I'm nowhere near done. So subscribe to the channel so you can come with me.
So I've come to Corfu for 3 reasons. The first is that there is no quarantine to get in, and there will be no quarantine when I get back to England. It's not perhaps the case with Scotland and Wales, but England is fine. Secondly, it's quite cheap. I reviewed my flight over here on British Airways, and I'll talk about how much it cost in that. And thirdly, I've never been here before. Those of you that follow the channel will know I made a video trying to answer the question of how many countries there are in the world. I used sort of 3 data points. There was the United Nations, but I thought that was a little low. There was the Traveller's Century Club, and I thought that was a little high. And then there was my list that I came up with as a compromise between those 2. So I've never been to Corfu, but I have been to Greece, so I don't get to increment that one or that one. But because the Traveller's Century Club considers Corfu to be distinct from Greece, and their rules are that it has to be geographically or culturally distinct, the Ionian Islands count as a country in the Traveller's Century Club, bringing me to 130. Corfu had been on my list for a while for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it's an interesting place to visit. But secondly, although mainland Greece is just over there, Albania is about 6 miles that way. And there are a couple of ferries that go back and forth quite regularly. There's also a World Heritage Site pretty close to the port in Albania. So you can pick up an entirely new country on just a day trip from here. I hadn't made it here before the shenanigans, and Albania is now very much on the naughty step, so that's not an option for this trip. But Corfu Town has been pleasant so far, and I can very much see myself returning and adding that Albania trip on next time round.
Eagle-eyed viewers might have noticed a few beads of perspiration on my brow during that intro. It was hot, about 35 degrees, which is 95 in old money. My Texan viewers might be laughing at that, but humidity was 75%, so it really was quite hot. It was so hot that even the pigeons wouldn't, well, pidge. Corfu has a lot of history and features heavily in ancient Greek mythology, its strategic location making it a coveted territory. For 400 years it was controlled by the Venetians, from which Corfu Town gained much of its architecture and the island gained significant fortifications. As the reach of the Venetians waned in the late 18th century, it fell under French, Ottoman and then British control before becoming Greek in 1864. Corfu's airport is only about 2 miles from Corfu Town, as you can see. Most people on package holidays will be met by reps, but independent travellers will find plenty of taxis just outside the modest terminal building, and there's plenty of car hire options also available. The ride into town took less than 10 minutes and cost €12, and going back to the airport cost me €10. The number 15 bus does shuttle between the town and the airport. Buy your ticket here and board the bus here. It costs just over €1 each way, but given there's only one stop in Corfu Town in a central square, which is unlikely to be convenient for your accommodation, I'd recommend a taxi. Most people visiting Corfu head to a beach resort and might then head into Corfu Town for a day trip or perhaps just for an evening out. Corfu Town, though, is a pretty interesting destination for a long weekend in its own right. There are 2 Venetian fortresses, the old one, which was started in the 6th century, but which the Venetians significantly developed in the 16th century, and the new fortress, which was started around the turn of the 17th century. New is obviously a relative term in Corfu history. I visited the old fortress, which was interesting enough and provided a great view of the city and the surroundings. Many other museums and notable buildings were closed due to the ongoing challenges, but the Museum of Asian Art would have been interesting to visit, as would a number of the Greek Orthodox churches in the town. I was content to just stroll through the old streets and soak up the atmosphere. The town itself does have a few beaches, probably better described as points of access for the sea, and there are certainly far better beaches elsewhere on the island. There are a few hotels on the edge of the old town and plenty of apartments available in the old town itself through the usual booking platforms. I chose the Bella Venezia Hotel, which is a 30-room boutique hotel located a few streets over from the old town. I found the best price was available by booking with the hotel directly and paid around €90 a night. That included a buffet breakfast which was served in the garden, with the staff assembling a plate for you in order to maintain hygiene. It was very nice. The room was a little bland, but it had everything you need, and although access to a pool would have been nice, I would certainly stay there again. There are no shortage of bars and restaurants in the old town, so you won't go hungry or thirsty. Virtually everything seemed to be open, and there were enough tourists in town to create some level of buzz, although many places were not busy. A few of the more upmarket restaurants, including a few of the seafood restaurants, had reduced or changed their menus as demand was so low. Generally, prices were good. For example, I had a very good plate of souvlaki with a beer for less than €15. Greece's response to the pandemic was quite straightforward. Inside, so the hotel, the airport, and all shops, masks were required, and I noticed some shops were limiting the number of patrons allowed inside. Outside, masks weren't required, and Greece's social distancing requirement was 1.5 metres. Compliance seemed high, and as most shops were open air and as you would tend to eat or drink outside, then masks were rarely needed in practice. I enjoyed my time in Corfu Town, and I will happily add it to the short list of winter sun options reachable within 3 hours of London. So thanks for watching. Please like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and leave me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again soon.